Hey guys, welcome to chapter 11-4, How Should We Protect and Sustain Wetlands? So we looked at marine ecosystems, and we've looked at how to protect and sustain those. We're looking at now wetlands this time, and specifically inland wetlands. We know that inland wetlands are disappearing around the world. We know that they are very, very valuable to us. They're highly productive as far as net primary productivity goes. They're natural flood and erosion control areas. They maintain high water quality for us as natural filters. They recharge aquifers, and they have a good effect, or well, at least effect on rising sea levels by kind of helping to maintain that. There are some laws for protection and preserving wetlands, and there's lots of them. But one law that kind of deteriorates it is mitigation banking. And this is a loophole, basically, in those laws that protect wetlands. And basically what mitigation banking is, it allows for the destruction of wetlands as long as an equal area of the same type of wetland is created or restored. And ecologists argue this should be a last resort, but unfortunately it's not. And if I go back to the text here a little bit, and I look a little bit closer at it, it says that in 2001, a study by the National Academy of Sciences found that at least half of the attempts to create new wetlands failed to replace the lost ones. And most of the created wetlands did not provide the ecological functions of natural wetlands. The study also found that the wetland creation projects often failed to meet the standards set for them and are not adequately monitored. So I'm not trying to point out any fingers on our community, but a lot of times places like Brookstone that may have been built and have been built on filled-in wetlands, their loophole is that they create some sort of equal wetland around it. And that can even sometimes be those drainage ponds that are fenced around in drainage areas. They count those at some of those areas as wetlands because it holds water. Don't necessarily agree with it. This has been a loophole for decades on how to fill in wetlands and destroy that ecosystem and say you're going to make up for it in a different spot or a later time. And it really doesn't do our ecosystem as far as wetlands any good. We have had some restoration projects. This is one, and it looks kind of weird, but this is the before picture over here. It used to be an old farm field in Canada, and then they actually flipped it, dug it out a little bit, planted some different vegetation, and now it looks like this in the same exact spot. So there are restoration projects that work, that we can rebuild our farmed on land and land that we have kind of overused into these wetlands, but very rarely does it actually happen, unfortunately. Individuals matter. One guy, Jim Callender, 1982, he kind of came up with the equation: scientific knowledge plus hard work equals restored wetlands in the California, United States. And he actually did do this, and the marshes that he created are used again by migratory fowl, which was another success story that has really paid off for wetland habitats. Another case that we're going to talk about are the Everglades in Florida. They call it the River of Grass. It's in South Florida. I don't know how many people have been there before, but it's really a sight to see. Since 1948, though, it's been damaged. It's been drained for use of water, for fresh water and farming and irrigation and also drinking. Diverted to allow different transport and allow water other places that would be used for farming. Paved over, roads built over it. Nutrient pollution from lots of agriculture, since they're using it for farming, all that runoff is getting into that system, and also invasion of plant species or invasive plant species. So in 1947, the Everglades National Park was put into place, and it really was an unsuccessful protection project because of the fact that the water had been diverted and drained and dealt with north of where the Everglades National Park was. So they weren't really restoring it or keeping it protected because all the water was being used and kind of tainted upstream. So that's really why it hadn't worked in 1947. In the 1970s, they finally figured out, that it really, and actually 1990s, the realization occurred, 1970s in between there, that there was like, okay, there is some problems going on here, but there's a lot of political haggling that took place. Politics took over both sides. The sugarcane farmers down there wanted the water for this, and it's a big industry, and the people who were supporting ecosystems were kind of butting heads the entire time. It took them 20 years to actually come up with a plan that was enacted to try to restore it. In 1990, the Comprehensive Everglades Restoration Plan, or what we know as CERP, was kind of put in place and was talked about and thought up. And it had a few goals in mind. They're pretty lofty goals, but they were goals anyway. The first one was to restore the curving flow of most of the Kissimmee River, which was at one time basically made into a straight line, and it used to be very curvy. So that was one of their first goals. Second one was to remove canals, levees in strategic locations, so that way that river can be restored. Also flood 240 square kilometers of farmland to create an artificial marsh that would bring habitat back. Another one was actually to create reservoirs, underground water storage areas, so that way that water can be replenished and held onto, and also to build new canals and reservoirs and efficient pumping systems that would not detract from the Everglades itself. The plan isn't working because the fact that, again, it's been taken, there's money put forth towards this. It's taken way too long to really get results. And again, the sugarcane industry and the sugarcane farmers were really competing and lobbying against this. And so it really they've been putting money towards it. They think, at least our book thinks that the money will eventually run out, and the plan really will never be complete, which is kind of a sad story. And this is just to take a look at the Everglades. This is what it looks like. This is all the agriculture area near Lake Okeechobee. And then there's the water conservation they're looking at, and there's the Everglades National Park. Well, they basically straighten out the river. They want to recurve this, flood some areas, and really restore Everglades because we're really doing some damage upstream. Well, let's take a look at some of what the Everglades looks like firsthand.